So first of all, what a pleasure it is to be here with you, Julianna. Like, this is an amazing group, and I can't tell you about the enthusiasm that I've heard because people knew you were coming to speak.
Oh,
So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Truly.
So I've got some questions for you, but first, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I read the book. Julianna wrote a book. Oh, yeah, Sunshine Girl.
Yes.
Read it.
You did, thank you.
I did, and I know about your background, but could you tell us a little bit about, like, you know, how you are here today and, like, your Jewish identity, how that factors into, you know, how you see yourself and how you show up in the world?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously you read the book, and I wasn't brought up Jewish. I'm 100% Jewish, and actually, since all of this has gone on, I've actually understood why my mother converted to Christianity when I was 5 years old. We were living in England. When she was a little girl living in Brooklyn, she was born in 1935. And everyone, you know, back then, her grandmother lived above, all the cousins were next door. Everyone was family within the apartment buildings. And at any Jewish holiday, they would close the curtains and say, shh, because the war was going on and the Holocaust was happening. And she never felt like she belonged anywhere because they always hid their identity. And I think she was always searching for belonging somewhere. So anyway, I wasn't really brought up Jewish, except when we would come back to the States and go to my aunt and uncle's house for Passover. And I would be so jealous of my cousins who could read the Torah and speak Hebrew, and I didn't understand a word that was going on. And then as I got older and finally found myself in Los Angeles for ER, I felt a little, I'm a New Yorker, and I felt a little out of place there. I need 4 seasons to keep moving. And I was taking care of my boyfriend at the time, his dog. I had the dog at the dog park, and this tiny woman came over to me and just started talking, and she had a very Brooklyn accent. And I said, "You are not from here." And she said, "No, I'm from Brooklyn." I said, "What do you do?" And she said, "I'm a rabbi." And I said, You are? I'd never met a female rabbi. And I said, "That's interesting. I'm Jewish, but I've never felt a connection to it because of my mother." And she said, "Come over for Passover."
Wow.
And I went. And I was moved to tears because it was the first time I saw Judaism from a spiritual lens rather than sort of something you're trying to run away from, like my mother. And she had me at that first Passover. And then I didn't really think much of it, except I would go to her synagogue, and it was a really beautiful experience to be a part of a community. And then I met my husband, and he was brought up Jewish and wanted to get married under a chuppah and bring our son up Jewish, and I was all in.
Bravo.
I love it. I love our Shabbat dinners on Friday nights. I love that our son has tradition, and that I belong to a community, and it felt very warm and embracing.
Well, that's a great segue because you talk about community. You wrote, and if you haven't read it, we should put it in the materials, Deb, an amazing op-ed in USA Today. It was after October the 7th, and it was called "My Non-Jewish Friends, Your Silence on Anti-Semitism is Loud." And I think just the headline alone makes a point that so many of us were feeling. So for someone who wasn't part of a community growing up, you've now run toward this community. But I think you've really struck a chord. I'd love to hear like how 10/7 affected you, and in an industry where it's not always easy, Julianna, to show up as the real you. What's it been like to show up as Jewish in this moment when so many people are just not doing that? And I don't want to criticize them.
No,
but I want to credit you for the courage you've shown.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Listen, my father was incredibly, my dad was a philosopher, writer, who always believed in truth and always taught me you don't stand silently by. And even though I didn't grow up in the traditional Jewish sense, I grew up always hearing about our relatives who were in the Holocaust, and the silence is what killed them. And to me, in that moment,
Yeah.
in the October 7th moment, I truly naively assumed, since we all know history, that everyone would speak up, that we would be held in our grief by the world. To see 1,200 Jews, innocent civilians, killed that way, I really believed that the world would anchor us in our grief.
Yeah.
And I was shocked and naive, obviously. I think many of us here were, that not only did no one say anything, but many people celebrated. And that killed me.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's about humanity. You know, I see myself as a humanist.
Yeah.
I love being a human and helping human beings, as we all do, hopefully, most of us. What I love about the Jewish community specifically is that we embrace everybody, gay, straight, you know, whatever you are, we embrace you. You know, we fought side by side with Dr. King for civil rights because we know what it's like to have your civil rights taken away. And so I just assumed that we were more advanced in our thinking on this planet than to see the reaction we have seen. And I could not sit by and watch without speaking up, which is why I wrote that op-ed. That came out of, I think anyone who is Jewish was very shaken. I don't know about you, but I couldn't eat or sleep for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was a wreck. And I went to do this reading for this evening of theater. And I walked in, it was probably a week after it happened. And I saw all these colleagues, friends of mine, actors I've worked with. I was so excited to see them all. And one of them came up to me, an actor I loved who I'd worked with on The Good Wife, and he goes, "Hey, how are you?" And I said, "Not good." And he said, "Oh, really? Why? What happened?" And I was like, "Well, October 7th happened." And he goes, "Yeah. Why does that affect you?"
Right.
It wasn't malicious. He wasn't meaning to be anything but curious as to why I was upset. And it dawned on me that my non-Jewish friends did not walk in our shoes. They didn't walk in our history. They didn't understand how it would be to feel what we were all feeling after witnessing October 7th. And that's why I went home that night and I looked at my husband and I went, "It's not that our friends don't like us, it's that they don't understand."
Yeah.
And I started penning that op-ed.
I have to tell you, one of the things I so admire and appreciate about Julianna is just how authentic she is. And I think it comes out in the characters you portray and the way that you bring yourself. And it comes out here. It came out here in that piece, and I hear it here in your voice. I think a lot of us were just so stunned because nobody told us to show up.
Right.
After George Floyd was killed, after Asian hate happened, when Latinos were getting, obviously you don't need to.
No.
You do what's right because it's right. And I know
Right.
the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people, because in this room, we have a lot of Jewish people, we have a lot of allies. And I think for our allies, there is nothing but infinite gratitude to have you here with us.
Yeah.
Nothing but gratitude. Nothing but gratitude.
But I just want to make one point to that because I think what's very important, I wrote that op-ed, I start with, "Let me begin by saying I love you," to my friends, and because I didn't want to shame anyone.
Yeah.
You know, there's no shame in not knowing. So it was a teaching moment because I find that social media and this crazy, there's so much blame and shame without any conversation or learning.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to come from a place of love rather than blame or shame.
So then how do we deal with our friends and in your field, in your craft? Like, how do we deal with the Jewish people who are sometimes very publicly Jewish? Like, they acknowledge their Judaism, it may be part of their characters, it may be part of the persona, who aren't showing up. I mean, you wrote or you said something at the Variety conference. So Variety did a summit on anti-Semitism, which just coincidentally was shortly after. It had been planned for like,
Months.
yeah, maybe 9 months. And it happened maybe in early November. It was right after 10/7.
It was October.
It was October.
It was just before the ADL concert.
So it was really remarkable. And you said you never imagined that you would be the person, right, standing up as a voice for our community in Hollywood. But tell me, like, how do you square that? Because again, I don't want to judge anyone, and I am not suggesting they should do what I do or what you do.
Right.
But talk to me about how you square that.
I mean, there are a few of us, and Deb Messing, who's a friend of mine, has been incredibly vocal. And
amazing, Deborah Messing.
And Sarah Silverman and Chelsea Handler and Sacha Baron Cohen, and there's a plethora of us, not enough of us.
Yeah.
What happens when you speak out? So I spoke out. I spoke at the really all we were talking about was anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And how can the industry change how people view Jews? And a dear friend of mine, who you know his wife, but David Cohen, who created Will and Grace, he was on one of the panels at this summit. And the way I was trying to describe how we could change the way Jews are seen in Hollywood, how we depict them, was the same way that David Cohen and Max Muchnick did Will and Grace. Was suddenly being gay was okay. When Will and Grace started, gay marriage in New York was not legal. And I mean, my husband and I went on camera to do a whole campaign about gay marriage. Why shouldn't you marry anyone you love? Like, whose business is it of yours, you know? Yeah. It's love. That's a good thing. So what I was talking about at the summit was I never, and I take responsibility for it, I never thought when I'm in a costume fitting for a character, a new character, no one's seen this character before, and the costume designer puts a cross on me, I'm like, okay, so she, you know, she's a journalist and she got this cross from one of her travels and blah, blah, blah. And I've worn crosses as Carol Hathaway in ER wore a cross. It never even dawned on me, what if it was a Star of David? Neither of those characters talked about Christianity or Catholicism. It just was on their neck. So I was just saying, can we change the narrative a little bit by just putting a Star of David or a high or something that was, you know, a religious Jewish, you know, symbol, but then it's not like the character has to talk about it. She just is that. And maybe that will start to sort of, oh, we're like you. We're just people. We don't have horns. We're not evil. Yeah. We're just regular. And then open up the dialogue a little bit. So I was talking about that. And back to your first point about why do you think people are reticent to speak out. Yeah. I got off the plane after that summit. And at the time, I was on Instagram, which I've never been comfortable with social media. I had to do it for Random House when I wrote my book. It was death threat after death threat after death threat after death threat. Names, horrible things. And I was stunned. Yeah. So I can guess why people are scared to speak out, because the public, or this noise, I like to call it the noise of social media, everyone has a platform and they're mean. Yeah. And it's brutal because I'm not a very public person. Yeah. And I mean, even going on Instagram, I remember saying to my publicist, what am I gonna post? I don't ever show my child. And she's like, you like to cook. You like your dog. I mean, literally, my posts are ridiculous. It's like, oh, and the morning show's coming out, and here's my dog. But I never, you know, I'm a private person. I like to live my life and then do my job. But I understand that the world is different now, and we have to sell books, you know. But what that does is it allows a group of people to hide behind hashtags and threaten your life. Whether that's true, whether they're going to come and kill you, I don't know. I'm sure if I was standing in the street and one of these people came up to me and I said hello, they'd probably just say, oh, hi. It's cowardly.
Yeah.
And so I think the threats and the constant noise that goes viral on when you're a public person, especially when you're trying to make your living portraying a character, is probably frightening. I don't blame anyone. In fact, you know, I was asked to partake in a video a couple weeks ago on anti-Semitism. And on the video, there were actually quite a few actors and models that aren't Jewish saying, I stand against anti-Semitism, because I asked them to send me what they were thinking of doing. And I said, I don't need to be on this video. In fact, no Jews should be on this video. This video should be 100% non-Jew. Because that's what I would do if I wasn't Jewish and I saw what's happening to our community. That's what I would do.
I think that's what you did, standing up against anti-Black racism.
Of course, that's what we did with you know, gay marriage and George Floyd. And, you know, I had the little black box up on my Instagram. No one has a blue box. You know, where's the humanity in how we treat one another?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. And by the way, I think your earlier point about silence and your friend, the former colleague, not knowing, I think this is part of the social media effect. Even if you're not Instagram, everybody else is.
Right.
And so they're getting algorithmically generated to them their news.
Right.
So if they're not in like the Jewish stream, they're just not aware.
They're not aware.
I mean, it's really, everyone has their own narrative today.
And none of it's really based in reality when it's social media, you know, so it's a frightening thing.
But I should say, speaking of reality, I mean, we connected, I don't know, it's a while ago, about this program you were undertaking at the New York Museum of Jewish Heritage, this Holocaust education program. And look, again, like, I didn't know Julianna at first. And
I think I called you.
yeah, she called me out of the blue and said, hey, can we talk about this? And again, like, when it didn't matter, when no one was looking or paying attention, Julianna sort of raised her hand. And I have just so much appreciation for the leadership you've shown. You don't have to. But talk about your program to this group, because I think there are people here who would be interested, who could be supporters, who could be involved.
So in 2021, I hosted a Holocaust Remembrance Day for CBS. Actually, I was so impressed that they were doing it. They did one for MTV, like a short version for people who don't have attention spans. and then a 2-hour Remembrance Day. And I asked them to send me all the information that and all the films that they were going to show so I could know what I was talking about. And I watched all these documentaries, short documentaries on it about teachers bringing Holocaust survivors to schools where they didn't teach Holocaust education. And I was moved to tears because these kids, 16, 17, and 18 years old, had never heard of the Holocaust, didn't know who Hitler was, and were completely unaware of the Jewish plight. And so when I did a little more digging, I found out in 2021, only 19 out of 50 states taught Holocaust education. And I was appalled because as a daughter of a scholar, we all know, you know, I mean, I was brought up to learn your history so it doesn't repeat itself. So I was pondering it when I thought I was doing it for free. My agents hate me because I do a lot of things for free. But I do also feel that that's paying it forward, right? I have such a beautiful life, and how can I not? So I, a few days later, got a check in the mail from CBS for $100,000. And I was like, I thought I was doing this for free. Oh my God, I got paid a lot of money. I wasn't counting on that money. And I kept thinking about this Holocaust problem educationally in this country. And so I called Jonathan, and I called Jack Klieger. Jack Klieger is the CEO of the Museum of Jewish Heritage. And I said, I've got this check. let's start a Holocaust education program. How do we do that?
Amazing.
Here. But it's called Hesp, Holocaust Educator School Partnership. And what's amazing about it is that we train college interns, an 8-day intensive training at the museum. We have incredible people at the museum on how to teach Holocaust education. We bring these interns to public schools. We do 1 hour of teaching the class, and then after the class, we bus them all for free to the museum to show them. There's over 45,000 artifacts at the museum and incredible exhibitions on, and the one right now, which we bring our students to, is called What Hate Can Do. And really, that's how I'm trying to change the narrative in these young students' minds, that this isn't about anything but hate. And let's be the heroes, right? Kids love to watch the Marvel movies and hero movies. Why aren't we standing up as the heroes? And anyway, we're in our 3rd year. I mean, I funded the first year, and then I had to start raising money, which was awful because I'm not good at it. But what's remarkable is that in our 3rd year, we are now finally moving into New Jersey, Connecticut, and we've gone from 2 interns to 20. And we went from reaching 500 students to, at the end of this semester, we will have reached 1,400 to 1,500 students. So it's growing.
Well, what I've told Julianna privately, and I've told my team privately, I will say publicly, ADL will do whatever we can to support you, because Holocaust education, look, it's a priority for us as an organization, but needs to be a priority for all of us as a country. It's more than a Jewish issue, it's a human issue.
It's a human issue, right.
And which just like brings me back to where we started, like I have nothing but gratitude, and our community is lucky to have you, Julianna, in our corner. Thank you so much. Julianna Margulies, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Thanks,